Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope you are doing great. Today we are going to study linguistics, that is an introduction to linguistics. So this course is targeted to students in the fourth semesters as well as the fifth semesters. Alright, so let's start with an outline of the course. So the course consists of definitions of some key concepts, and it presents the main branches of linguistics, namely phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So let's start with definitions of key terms. Linguistics is the scientific study of language. It was established by Dusaucher and Chomsky in the 19th century, and it draws on modern grammar rather than traditional grammar. In other words, it describes how people speak. It does not prescribe how people should speak. So this is the definition of linguistics in general. And for language is a means of communication, and here we are talking about human language that is distinguished from artificial language or animal language. So according to Hockett 1958, there are design features that distinguish human language from other systems of communication. The first feature is voice auditory channel. So when I speak, you hear me. So there is this voice and hearing mechanisms involved in the production and reception of the language. We have rapid fading or transitoriness. That is, when I speak, my words do not remain in the void. So the third design feature is interchangeability. Here, so one can be speaker and the listener at the same time. And then we have total feedback, which is more or less the same. So we can get feedback on what we say, that is, we receive messages back, etc. We have specialization, that is, the human language is specialized in the sense that it concerns only humans, and each or some particular groups, in the sense that we have different languages for different groups or countries. We have semanticity. This means that human language is meaningful, so we can understand what is being said. Then we have arbitrariness. This means that there is an arbitrary relationship between the signifier on the one hand, that is the word, be it in spoken or written form, and the signified, that is the concept that we draw from that word. For example, a pen in English signifies to the means with which we write, all right? But in Arabic it can mean qalam. So there is no logical relationship between the word qalam and the actual physical object in the real life. Discreteness again, so language is discrete. It can be divided into parts and subparts, and it can be distinguished from other systems. Then we have displacement, so it can be anywhere, here and now, or anywhere or everywhere. Especially we can speak from different distances here. We have productivity, which means that out of limited number of words we can produce an unlimited number of sentences. So there is this productivity of language. We have cultural transmission. Again, different cultures transmit their beliefs by the means of language. So this is cultural transmission. We have duality of patterning, in the sense that we have, for example, a signifier and signified. We have the sound and the meaning, etc. So there's this duality. We have prevarication, that is, we use language to deceive others and not to tell the truth. So this is one of the features of human language. And we have reflexivity and learnability. It's learnability, that is, humans can learn or pick up as many languages as possible. All right, so that's it. Concerning reflexivity, here we can think about language. So language reflects our thoughts and feelings. These are, in brief, the main features of human language and some interpretations of these features. Then we move on to the first branch of linguistics, which is phonetics. Phonetics علم الصوتيات, and it is a branch of linguistics that studies how humans produce and perceive sounds. In this sense, we have acoustic phonetics, which focuses on the physical properties of the sounds of a language; auditory phonetics, which focuses on how listeners perceive the sounds of a language; and we have articulatory phonetics, which focuses on how the vocal tract produces the sounds of language. So here we are concerned mainly with articulatory phonetics, which studies the places of articulation, the manner of articulation, and voicing, which can be also considered within the manner of articulation. The major places of articulation are bilabial, like p, b, m; labiodental, like f, v; interdental, like t, d; alveolar, like t, d; palatal, like k, g; velar, uvular, and glottal for consonants, and they depend on the tongue or the position of the tongue. Is it high or in high position, a mid position, or low position? And the rounding of the lips. Are the lips rounded like o, etc., or unrounded like e, a, etc.? All right. So these are like the main parameters that help us classify sounds. All right. Then we have the next parameter, that is manner of articulation, which in turn consists of many values like stops when the airstream is obstructed, like fricatives. There is an obstruction, but not to that extent of stopping the airstream. We have affricates again, in addition to oral and nasal sounds, liquids, and glides. Voicing again depends on the vibration of the vocal cords, and each sound has its voiced counterpart. So we have p, b, t, d, k, g, sh, j, m, or m. So m is just a voiced sound anyway because it is nasal consonant. K, g, etc., etc. All right. Here is also a voiceless sound. Okay, so phonology studies. So now we move to phonology. So if phonetics studies sounds in isolation by describing them and classifying them, phonology studies sounds when they are in interaction with other sounds. That is, it studies the sound patterns of language. All right, so in this regard, we have phonological rules that arise when we have this interaction among sounds, like assimilation, when one sound gets some features of the adjacent or sounds; dissimilation, which is the opposite; we have epenthesis when we add some sounds like schwa; we have insertion again, which is the equivalent of epenthesis; and we have deletion when we delete some sounds when we pronounce some words. Here we talk about silent letters like psychology, so, etc., etc. The the phonetic environment. So this is like should be the phonetic, not the phonetic. So sorry, this is a typo. So environment affects how sounds are pronounced, like the third person that is realized as is, the, and s. They are called allomorphs. So these are like different variants of the same phoneme, okay, or the same phoneme. Minimal pairs are words that are similar in everything except for one sound. So here the minimal pairs help distinguish phonemes from allophones. Phonemes change the meaning, whereas allophones are just variants of the phoneme. They do not change the meaning. Like in Morocco, we can say gal with g, and qal with q. So these g and q in these words are like allophones, so they do not distinguish the meaning. All right, so this is like the definition of allophones. So allophones are said to occur in complementary distribution, that is not in the same place. So we have either in free variation They can be used interchangeably or in complementary distribution. That is, when one allophone occurs, the other does not occur. All right. Morphology. Here we move to morphology. So if phonology studies the sound patterns of language along with phonetics, morphology studies the internal structures of word formation. So it can be either derivational or inflectional morphology. Derivational morphology involves the category changes, like from a noun to a verb. For example, category to categorize. So we add the suffix ize to make the word a verb. This is for derivational morphology. For inflectional morphology, it involves the use of grammatical morphemes that do not involve a category change, and the marked changes in tenses, in pluralization, among others, like he does, she does, we do, etc., etc. So we add the es just for the third person singular. All right, that's it. So I think the distinction is clear. We have syntax. Syntax studies the combination of words to form phrases, clauses, or sentences. And we have this notion of syntactic ambiguity that arises due to the confusing structures, or the confusion caused by syntactic structures. All right, like the boy hits his friend because he was drunk, or the father hits his son because he was drunk. Here, because he was drunk, we don't know who was drunk. Was it the father or the son? So there is this syntactic confusion. All right, we have transformational grammar that deals with different transformations, like the passivization, like interrogative forms, among others. Okay, this is for syntax in general. We have phrase structure, rules, etc. I'm going to study that later. Semantics is a branch of linguistics that studies meaning in isolation. So it deals here with semantic relationships like synonymy, that is when words have almost the same meaning. We have autonomy, when they have opposite meaning. We have hyponymy, when one word or is included, or the meaning of one word is included within a larger category, like cat within animals. Polysemy, that one word has different meanings. Homonymy, among others. All right. Homophony, that is when the words have the same sounds but different meanings. So these are semantic relationships that are studied within semantics. And then we have literal meaning, and that is the denotation, and we have the figurative meaning, that is the connotation of words. Then we have presupposition, etc. So there are different interesting topics within semantics that should be studied per se. Then we have pragmatics. So if semantics studies language in isolation or meaning in isolation, pragmatics studies meaning in context. All right. In this sense, we have speech act theory developed by Austin and Searle, 1960s. I hope the date is correct. You can check it later. So speech act theory presumes that we do actions using words, like when someone says that I declare you, or I declare you a husband and wife within a church in a Christian society. So this means that the marriage has been done. All right. So this is like speech act. When I say I promise to do something, this means that a promise has been made. It is you will do something with words. So how to do things with words. Politeness, again, we have these politeness strategies like positive politeness, negative politeness. So this is a theory that has been developed by Brown and Levinson, and you can study it in detail. And we have the maxims of Christ, that is the maxim of quantity, the maxim of quality, the maxim of manner, the maxim of relevance. So this means that we should say what is required, no more, no less, and we should study what is true, or we should say, sorry, what is true and what is relevant to the conversation. All right. So this is, the brief idea about these maxims developed by the linguist Grice. Okay, so these are suggested readings. So I advise you to read this or these books. So we have the first book, that is from Ken Rodman, Have's Introduction to Language, which is a really good one. And we have this Montgomery Introduction to Language and Society if you want to study more social linguistics. And if you have questions or remarks, do not hesitate to post them below, and see you in another tutorial.